and I feel very used, you know. And I kind of missed the trip to Vegas this week because she wouldn't let me go because she didn't know what condition. She didn't know what type of condition I'd be when I got back. So we've got a big show in Vegas. So this is going to be really exciting, guys. I have about 3 hours with about 200 slides that I'm going to go through and just tell you all about our products. No. So I work for Sophos, as Asia mentioned, and I've been a sales engineer. And so what a sales engineer is basically we sell the product to our customers and talk about the different security threats. Sophos is a network security company, so everything that we talk and focus on is security focused. I'll tell you a little bit about the company here in a little bit.
We don't care about the company.
First, just to give a little bit of basis, quiet down in the front. I've got a couple videos here I'm going to show you just because it ties into one of the pictures, and I think they're pretty fun, so it's more so for my own entertainment. And I'm supposed to put a mic on, aren't I?
We're very concerned about viruses getting in through email. So we've done away with email altogether and switched to the trusty bow and arrow. Simply attach a note and fire away.
Oh, it's not coming up? I'm sorry.
Sweet Georgia.
I got two screens here. Hold on. Is it over there now? I can't see.
Very concerned about viruses getting in through email. So we've done away with email altogether and switched to the trusty bow and arrow. Simply attach a note and fire away. Sweet Georgia. There's one now. Looks like that meeting's been pushed back 10 minutes.
All right. Like I said, that was just for my own entertainment here. So I just noticed they said Sweet Georgia also. All right, back to this. Okay, so I live here in Prosper. We live actually down the road, not too far, around Kuwait in the Greens Point area. I've been in IT for pushing 20 years. I worked at EDS, if everyone's familiar with EDS being around here. I worked there for about 10 years, and then I worked at 7-Eleven. Funny story, when Asia and I met, and she found out I worked at 7-Eleven. I don't think that was too big of a hit, but I was working on the network security team. Is this on, or do I have to actually turn it on?
No, it's good.
Okay. All right, I've got a lot of really embarrassing pictures of Asia that I'm going to show, so just joking. Just to show that I'm not all geeky, I used to wakeboard. I wakeboarded for many years, got 3 screws in my shoulder. I have a really bad memory, as Asia will attest to, probably related. I filled that in with golf. I've actually got a tee time this afternoon at General Creek. This is one of the SEs on my team that lives over in the McKinney area, just showing our teamwork here. We happen to have the coolest bulldog. And this is my crew at home. The only reason I kind of showed one of those videos is the guy in the middle is the one that he's a personality for us at Sophos. I got to meet him at Vegas, and it was pretty funny. So he's quite a character. He's actually a middle school teacher in Utah. He just does this on the side. So there's a ton of different videos out there that he does that are very similar to that kind of slapstick humor. So we're a company that was founded back in 1985 by a couple PhDs from Oxford. So we've been around for a long time, especially when you talk in the security space. I think back to 1985, it had to be a totally different landscape. Really the only purpose of this slide is to kind of show you we're a very global company, and where that's relevant is that we are monitoring all the threats that exist in the landscape. And a lot of that's what I'm going to talk about today, is what we see and just kind of some different things that you can do to just be smart about what's out there on the internet, what not to click on, and how to just kind of take a look at things a little bit before you get yourself in a pinch. So we'll talk a little bit about terminology. Ransomware. I'm sure lately everyone's heard the term ransomware because it's become a lot bigger in the media that it's been. It's been around for quite some time. but it's just recently become a very big media trigger and things we hear a lot about. I'll talk a little bit about the details. I'm normally presenting to very technical presentations, so I'm switching it up a little bit here, but I'm still going to kind of show you a highlight of some of the things and how advanced some of the threats are and how they get in, but I won't go into the granular details. Why are the attacks successful? And then some of the different things that you can do to just protect yourself. All right, so vulnerability. Anyone want to answer what maybe a vulnerability is? Asia? Microsoft? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said Microsoft, which would have been pretty close. Basically, a vulnerability is going to be a legitimate application that you have, whether it's an operating system or an application. Maybe it's Word, maybe it's an app on your phone. It's something that is essentially a bug in that software that can be compromised. And there's a lot of different ways that can be compromised. One of the ways is through the exploits. So the exploit is basically what's taking advantage of that vulnerability that exists and trying to expose it, whether it's putting in some code so it can sit there quietly and monitor what you're doing, or do a lot of other activities. A patch that we hear about all the time coming out from Microsoft is going to be what fixes those vulnerabilities. So there's many, many vulnerabilities that come out in just every day, and a patch is going to have to be created by that vendor to go in and fix that. A botnet. So anyone heard the term botnet? A botnet is something that can reside on your computer. You know, there's actually, last I saw, there's a Zeus botnet, and there's about 4 million that exist just in the United States that is sitting there resident on your machine, that they can use that to go attack other people. And I'll use some references to that. But basically, it's an application that's running on your machine that at some point, they found that vulnerability that wasn't patched and exploited it to get you to run that on there. And just their goal is to sit there quietly. They don't want to be found. DOS. So that's a denial of service. Not maybe the DOS that you're thinking of that was the black command prompt from back in the day of Microsoft. This is a denial of service, or there's also a distributed denial of service. This is where the botnets are being leveraged. So it could be your machine if you find out, hey, my machine's running slow, which I get calls from my dad all the time. He lives up in Iowa, and he always wants me to, of course, be his technical support, which is fun when he's 12 hours away. But luckily, I have a way to actually just remote into his machine and take a look. But if, say, your machine's running slow, you could actually have something running on your machine that is then being leveraged to go out and do a denial of service. So you hear about like Anonymous that exists out there, and they go and they take some government website down. They're leveraging the botnets, and these botnets can actually be sold on the market to be used to do that. Ransomware, I'll go into more detail on this, but I think everyone's lightly familiar with that. Spyware, this is another one that's just going to sit there and just reside on your machine. Maybe it's doing a keyboard logger. Maybe it's looking for your bank credentials. Some of those are just sitting there monitoring. Adware would be another one where it's just leveraging something to get ads to populate onto your machine. And a worm. A worm is something that's going to, again, take advantage of a vulnerability, run on your machine, and then it's going to look for everything else around you to spread, whether it's in your global address list, your email book, or address book, on the network that you sit in, maybe in one of your offices. So it's just looking where it can spread and how to find that. And then a Trojan is essentially just what we think of with a Trojan horse, where it's sitting there, resident on there, and just looking to take advantage of that machine. Phishing is probably the one that's going to be most relevant, maybe other than the ransomware, as a threat for everyone in here. Phishing and spam has been around for many, many years, but it continues to be an issue just because of how advanced and how good they continue to get. We're always a step behind trying to play catch up, and a lot of security companies are doing some things to try and rectify that. And then hacktivism, I mentioned Anonymous earlier. They're a perfect example of hacktivism and trying to use the internet essentially to bring bring people down and get attention to maybe certain political interests. I'm sorry. I thought I closed that. All right, and a firewall. A firewall is something that you can do to protect. Whether you're talking about your individual machine or you're talking on the network, there's a lot of different things that a firewall can take the meaning of. But this is from a protection perspective for you to protect yourselves. Take off my jacket here real quick. All right, so it's digging on ransomware. Anyone been hit, and I guess you don't have to raise your hand, but anyone been hit or know a family member, someone who's been hit with ransomware company? It's getting hard these days to not know someone who's been hit with ransomware. And it can come in a lot of different forms. You can see it can prevent access. So there's been one flavor of it to where maybe an email comes in, you click on this email, and it executes ransomware. It'll reboot your machine, and then it overlays a screen and doesn't even allow you to log into that machine. Another one, there was one on Android, it was called Kohler, that did pretty much the same thing, but on your mobile phone. You basically boot up your Android device, and it wouldn't allow you to do anything. Basically, what their goal is, it's not hacktivism. This is actually just big business. They're making millions and millions of dollars in ransomware, and they have help desks established for you to call because they want you to be able to pay the ransom and get your data back. It's in their best interest because if you pay it and you get your data back, then you're going to tell your friend that you did that, and they'll just continue to grow. So, believe it or not, they're actually into customer support.
Is that legal?
No. No, a lot of this is coming from Eastern Europe and Russia and China. So it's just one of those, and these networks will be shut down at times, but then someone else is just going to stand it back up.
So they close it down, and then you have to call that particular one that is okay, and the number flies on the screen.
So they'll actually give you Bitcoin has really helped proliferate ransomware out a lot because of the inability to track the payment system. A while back, they used to use like the vanilla payment from either like a 7-Eleven or Walgreens, where you go get that and you send that in. But Bitcoin's really helped them. They'll give you an address, and then you go and pay them whatever the going rate is. A lot of times we're seeing there's kind of a sweet spot of in between like $350 and $700 is what they found people are willing to pay. Wow. So, I mean, if you lost all of your family photos, all of your client data, at some point you're going to say, well, I really need this back, and I don't have a backup. So at some point you're just going to bite the bullet and pay the ransom.
So I just wanted to say a couple of things, like on this, like I'm in the mortgage business, and this has happened to a couple of mortgage companies in Dallas. Mm-hmm. So that's a big one. And then the other one that's related to this that's happening a lot is people with emails, using emails that are similar to loan officers, and then sending it to buyers, and then asking buyers for their down payment. Yep. And then that money being stolen and taken to Europe or whatever. And there's nothing that the mortgage company or title company can do about it.
Yep. And similar around the commissions. We're seeing that as well. So a lot of times there have been a lot of cases where someone's commission is basically wired over to some other party. And what they're doing is a lot of times is they have control of that machine. If you look back to the other terms I was talking about, they're silently sitting there listening, whether it's in your email or on your machine, and they're aware of when this transaction is going down. So they're just prepared to spoof that email, to pretend it's coming from somewhere else. So you just have to be really careful and really take a look at emails and see if there's something suspicious about it. Take a look at maybe the header of that email and find out if it's really coming where it says it's coming from, or if it's being spoofed. Another example of ransomware is when I was with a previous company, my sales rep and I went down to it's a commercial real estate company downtown Dallas. We're sitting there with the director of IT, and he's like, "Hey, we need to talk about spam. We need a solution. Ours isn't working." I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, we lost our domain." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, an email came in. Someone clicked on it, and they put in their credentials, and it failed. Put in the credentials again, and it failed." By the third time, they had realized that they just gave their credentials over to someone from China, is where they tracked it down to. They went and grabbed their domain. So you imagine, it's ebby.com, they grab that domain, everything, emails go down, VPN goes down, basically all transactions that you guys are doing electronically, all business is halted. So funny thing about that story is my sales rep said, well, what idiot did that? And the director's like, it'd be funny if it wasn't me. So we got in the elevator and we're like, awkward. So the biggest thing that we're seeing with ransomware right now, though, is they're going after your files. As I mentioned, the photos, the client data, they're going and hitting the machine and just swiping through it, looking for specific extensions. What they don't want to do is affect the operating system. If the operating system can't boot up, that machine's a brick for you at that point, and you're just going to go and get it re-imaged. So they specifically don't go after the operating system files, just after the ones that are important to you and that could potentially hurt you. So definitely do backups. If you're not doing backups, do backups.
And I've seen this happen too with like pretending to be your Apple ID thing, like getting an email saying,
Yep.
did you recently change your password? Click here if you didn't. And
Yeah.
it's a pseudo Apple website that tries to get you.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of times you can hover over those links and see where it's actually going, because they can make a hyperlink look like whatever they want. But if you hover over the link and pay close attention to the URL, one, don't click on the email, go log into the site, pull it up. If say it comes from your bank, Chase, don't go click on it, actually go to Chase and sign into it. That's a better way to do that. But they'll get the domain names that are, like, I use the example LinkedIn. They can have two I's. You put those two I's together, it's pretty hard to decipher those. So it's really easy for them to do that, and they can just clone that whole website.
If you get any of this ransomware, is there anything you can do other than pay the ransom to get your information back?
So for people who have really good backups, they can, what I would say is just pretty much take a shotgun to that machine, just wipe it, format it, and start over, and then restore your backups. That's the best thing that you can do if you do get hit with it. The FBI got in a little bit of hot water a couple years ago saying, if you get hit with a ransom and you need your data back, just pay the ransom. It was one agent, and there was quite a few articles on that. But obviously that's just promoting this whole business. But there's just a lot of things. I mean, we as users are the weakest link in this, and it always comes in. If you're a big organization and you get one person to click on something, then it can get into that environment, and then it can spread like a worm to everything else. So it's pretty serious. Another way that this is, and I'm not here to like just scare you guys about everything that exists out there, because it all sounds really bad, but it is once you get hit with it, and it can really affect either your life or whatever company that you work for. This is an example of a malvertising threat chain. So what's scary about this is this can be, you think about a website that you go to. You know nothing about this website. You don't know what their security parameters are, how good they are with IT. They might be a one-man shop, and you think they appear to be a really legitimate company, but they haven't updated the servers in a couple of years, and they don't really run any virus software on there. And this thing is just riddled with the bad guys. So you go to this website, you don't even have to, unbeknownst to you, they can execute this code on your machine if you have some vulnerabilities on your side. And that's where it gets kind of scary. So this is just walking through, and I'll zip through this pretty quick, but you're the user here in green, and you're going to this valid website. You're not even clicking on something that came in through email. And there's an ad network. Everyone knows the ad networks that show up on the right-hand side. Usually it's a little creepy because you were just looking up something on Amazon, and now it's populated in the right-hand pane. Looking at your cookies and what's relevant to you. So what they're doing is they're going to the third-party ad networks. And these third-party ad networks are asking for a real-time bid. These bids, this is where it's kind of taking a snapshot of you, who you are, and then populating those ads for you. Now you can see the bad guy here, of course, wearing a cloak and a hat, has compromised this back-end real-time bid. And then they're going to inject that into these ads that are going to pop up for you. Now you can see, I mean, who doesn't want a gift certificate from PayPal? You click on this, and at that point, that's when they're able to actually infect, because there was a vulnerability in Flash on your machine. Working in security, there's a lot of different things we do, but if you work in security and your boss sends you a link and say, hey, I'm testing something out, click on this, it's probably probably wasn't wise on my part to click on it, but the next day I go to my machine and who was it? I can picture his face. This like old 80s song starts playing on my machine, and he got a kick out of that. So,
doing like
Rick Astley, that's who it was.
through stuff like that, like purposeful, sending out emails that look like that, and when somebody clicks on it, it's like a whole training, like here are all the warning signs that you should have.
Yes,
read.
we have what I call a public shaming campaign inside of our company, where we send out spam, and it's training specifically. But someone clicks on it, and the people that are guilty, they send it out to everyone. So basically, you can kind of stone them in public after that. So, just this is actually this one is probably a little over a year and a half old, and there's been a lot of new ransomwares to come since this. I've updated this slide, but this is just showing you all the different variants that exist out there, the different organizations that are taking advantage of this. So I'll skip through this, skip over it a little bit. There's two main vectors of attack with a lot of this, and specifically to ransomware, is the spam. It's social engineered. They've got a lot of insight about you. Maybe if you're a C-level at a company, think about how much public information you have out there about yourself. LinkedIn, about how much you have. So they can do a lot of social engineering on that and do a spear phishing. And I'll talk on specific details on that in a bit. But get some real valid information on you, seemingly accurate info for you, and get you to click on it, so then they can try and find out what vulnerabilities you have. Once they get you to click on something, they can just run a report of what vulnerabilities exist and how they're going to try to exploit you. We've got some tools that we've done and tested that out, and it's when you put yourself on the hacker side and all the tools that are available to them, it's pretty creepy. The other one is exploit kits, and that goes into a little more technical, so I won't go in too much detail, but essentially what these are exploit as a service. So you can subscribe as a hacker. You don't even have to be that smart. You can subscribe to this exploit kit. They stand everything up for you, and then now you basically just decide what you want to do with it. It's kind of like an MLM where you're running your own business on their back end. And you are deciding how you want to run your business, how you want to try and spread this out and about. As I said, spam is still very relevant and continues to be a main issue. 70% of all ransomware that we're seeing is still coming in through email and through spam. The different types is going to be the bulk phishing. So this is just kind of blasting something out. Not much social engineering in it. You can see this is some of these are specific examples from our Sophos labs. Your Netflix account has been suspended. Again, instead of clicking on that, maybe just go log into Netflix directly. But it's kind of like a numbers game, as in sales. They get 1 or 2% of the people to click on it, and that's going to be enough for them. Yeah.
How did the hackers get your email address? Is it they just pull it off the internet, or is it from other hacks that they've done?
Yeah, they can. So there's a lot of different ways that they can do it. There's information that exists out there. They can just like pull it down, or they can just, with a random generator, just put in names and try all kinds of different formats. There are utilities that exist for them to just put it in, and it's just blasting things out. And if they don't get a failed delivery, then they know more than likely this was a valid email, and now they've got that to store that, and then they can use that and sell that to other hackers, so that, hey, this is probably a valid email, and you can sell this, and you can leverage it. Spear phishing is the one I talked about that's more directed at you, and having some valid information on you, and a little more detailed. And then whaling. Whaling is what I was referring to, maybe going after the CFO of a company, and because they've got a lot of information out there, they may have some insight into what dealings they're doing. And directly attack them. So this is just a quick report from 2016, just showing the amount of damage for phishing. 1.6 million was what the average company had to pay in damages from getting hit with a phishing attack, and overall it was believed to be about 2.5 billion over that year. This was just in the U.S. This is from the FBI. This was phishing as a service, as I mentioned earlier. Probably can't make out all the words on this slide, but this is essentially them just subscribing to something and going out and leveraging someone else's network and intelligence. These are different. Now, if you're using Outlook, you know that Outlook blocks macros. So if you click on the macros, what the macro essentially does is allows you to embed code within that will execute. So it's doing that intentionally as a security purpose. I know a lot of times if someone sees the you must enable macros, they'll just click it because they don't know what it is. That's how a macro is basically allows the code to be embedded into an Excel spreadsheet, Word document. It's actually like an executable. These are different. These emails came specifically from our Sophos labs, where these are just tricks. You can see this. This is an image that is actually an image that's blurred out, but they have a message here that says, if you need to see this image, click on Enable Macros. It's just tricking people there's no information in there. It's just tricking them to get them to click on it. Another one saying these images are hidden. Click on the macros, and essentially they can execute that code. What's that?
Where do we go to see if we enable macros?
So if you're running a more recent version of Outlook, when you pull up an email, it'll show you the enable macros up at the top. I want to say is it Office 2010 that had like that enabled by default. If not, if you've got an older version of it, you can go under the settings and see whether or not you want to enable it by default. I'll show you the last one here just because I want to show you that it did work. I mean, curiosity killed the cat is essentially what this is. But this is an email that came in just with the word text, and it says enable macros, and it actually worked, and someone clicked on that. So in some cases, like I said, it doesn't take much to get someone to click on something. So I touched on exploit kits, and I don't know how I am on time. I don't want to take too much time. What time is it right now?
12:41.
What do I have, like 10 minutes? 5? Okay, I'm going to skip through exploits. This is just actually showing you the, I can talk as long as you want. This is pretty much what I do. So this is just showing you the network that exists. The exploit kit customers over here, again, kind of in this MLM or exploit as a service, where they're standing up the network and then trying to take advantage of the victims, and they decide once they've got them to click on it what payloads they want to send. A lot of cases right now we're looking at ransomware. And I'll skip through this one. This one got a little more.
It's like what we need to do to try to keep this from happening.
This is an image that is just showing you in the code of a piece of ransomware all the extensions it's looking for. You got bitmaps, so pictures, Excel spreadsheets, Word docs, PowerPoints, just anything that's going to be something that is valuable to you.
So the extensions you buy on Google, you're saying that you know how you do the Google Streak or the extensions does that open the door for someone to come in? You said something about extensions. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So the extensions is going to be like in a Word document. It's going to be like a file.doc or docx. Okay. They're going after those specific file types, really. Is when I say extensions, it's file types. Oh. More of like the different programs that are using it, like JPEGs.
I see.
Would be one.
Okay.
So I'll just show you this. This is an example from WannaCry that you heard about recently in the news. This is a screenshot asking for the Bitcoin payment. It's showing you a countdown where they're giving you a little bit of heat to say, pay this within this amount of time or your data is all going to be destroyed. Or in some cases, it'll go up in cost if you don't pay it within a certain amount of time.
How do you get them to not go back and do it again on your computer since they already have all your information?
Well, it comes down to the vulnerabilities. If your machine is up to date, you're running some good antivirus software, you've got all your vulnerabilities patched, you're smart about what you're going and clicking on. There's just a lot about that because at that, they'll have a lot of information from you. Obviously, you want to change passwords. They could have been sitting there just skimming passwords from you as well. So there's just a lot of different things you want to do. This is just an image that I get a kick out of. I don't know if anyone in here does any smart home stuff. I'm kind of addicted to it, as Asia will tell you. I can't do enough of it on there. She has to slow me down. But this is just showing you, for example, you got the Roomba, and it says, wire my hacker $100 or I'll reverse the motor and blow dirt all over the place. The coffee machine is $20 in my PayPal account or I'll only brew decaf. So it just it makes you think about everything that's getting internet connected, and how many of these manufacturers out there are really going to be conscious of the vulnerabilities that may exist. This is just an example of a screenshot on our smart homes. Asia drives down the street and the garage door opens, and it's pretty fun stuff, isn't it? It can, yeah, it can. In a lot of cases, I kind of look at it as, I always say, it's funny, we used to live in Oak Cliff. We lived in Oak Cliff for like 13 years, and we moved out to Prosper. Everyone's got video cameras and guns, and we live in a gated community. And we didn't have any of this at Oak Cliff. We were fine. Someone stole a ladder from me once, I think. But yeah, absolutely. And there's different things that you can do with this. Make sure that this is up to date, and make sure that you use strong passwords. So.
What is a strong password?
It's going to be a lot of different characters, and throwing in different capitalization, numbers, just something that's not really easy. Password 123. There's a lot of things that are in password databases when they're going and trying to do a dictionary attack, that they're trying to find out, like, do you use just password 123 or SSWRD, something like that. So just something a little complex and not like, maybe not your dog's name. Guilty.
Do you recommend a certain password manager? Because I know they have different tools.
Yeah. So I was going to touch on that coming up in one of these other slides. I have to get going, don't I?
Yep.
So yeah, I'll skip that one. Wireless best practices, and I'll come back to that real quick. Don't go in, and especially if it's you're going and doing some transactions that have to do with work. Don't go in and jump onto an open wireless network. Use your phone as a hotspot. I know data becomes pretty precious on that. Use your home Wi-Fi as much as you can, but use your hotspot, say when you go to Starbucks, because even though they prompt you and have you like put in an ID and a password, or make you accept terms, that all of that data is still sitting out in the open. For $50, I can pretend that I'm Starbucks and get all of your information as you're going through there if it's not encrypted to the back end. A lot of things are now encrypted to the back end. Your email is, the websites you go to, and so on. But just still really good practice to not use something that is an open network, because it's so easy to spoof that. Secure your home wireless. I've got some stories on that I'll skip over, but I used to think, if someone wanted to use my wireless, whatever. Long story short, there was a guy in Florida that actually got arrested, got divorced. His life was ruined because someone was war driving out in front of his house, dropping really inappropriate content on his machine, and got him arrested. All right, so I've kind of touched over most of this. It's really skillful social engineering. They're able to take the malicious code and bury it into things that you're using, that you require, or you are required to use on a day-to-day basis. And because a lot of people don't have backups. A lot of times when people do have backups, they're not that confident that, one, they're up to date, or that they're actually going to work, especially in corporation world. Always update and patch your systems as soon as they come out. In a lot of cases, we're seeing that patches aren't coming out as quickly as they need to. And sometimes they're talking a couple hundred days before a patch will come out. So you might be sitting there.
When you get something that says update your software on your phone, or
Yes.
update the app or whatever.
Yes. Yep, that's on the mobile side on your machine. If you're running Windows or Mac, go and update, because a lot of times there's some pretty serious security vulnerabilities that exist there. Oh, go ahead.
So for backing up to a cloud, is that really ideal, or do you want a hard drive?
Cloud is good, but if you are always connected to that, ransomware is actually looking for that too. So if you're connected to iCloud or whatever you use for a product of backup in the cloud, If you're connected to that, they're just going to look for it and rip through that as well. So now your backups are encrypted. So if you have like an external drive that you can plug in and back everything up on that, you know, you're in a better situation there. Yeah, yep. That's the way that I would prefer to. Obviously, it's nice if you're out and about to have access to that cloud if you're on someone else's machine, but I wouldn't rely on that as the only backup. I'd almost use that more of a convenience. No.
Do apples have less vulnerability than we
If you suspect something has happened, and it's been a few weeks since you backed up on a hard drive, you don't want to back it up if you suspect something, do you? Because you're just going to infect your backup.
Correct. If it's something that's embedded in what you're pulling down as a backup, absolutely. And if it's, say, in that macro on a Word document, and you execute that again, then it could come down. So you definitely want to make sure that it is clean as you're backing that up, for sure.
How do you know?
You have to run something that is
What should we be running?
Sophos. You should be running Sophos.
how do we get it?
I've got a slide here. I'll show you a couple things.
You've scared all of us.
So the last thing I'll touch on, when I was at 7-Eleven, we always had the conflicting priorities of the security versus productivity. We got hit, and this was before it really hit the media when people got hit. We got hit, FBI comes in, takes a bunch of servers away, and at that point it went from, well, it's kind of inconvenient if we put this in, to, I don't care how inconvenient it is, go and do it because security comes first now. And that's almost a mentality that you have to have is, yeah, this might not be real easy, but you want to take advantage of two-factor authentication whenever you can. A lot of different apps and phones and other platforms that you may use. I think Facebook even has like the two-factor authentication. Leverage that whenever you can because that ensures that you've got something on you and your password. So it just is an extra level. All right. I pretty much touched on most of this here. God, you're on my ass. All right, just a couple things here that we offer from Sophos, and these are all free, so that's why I like to put these up here. Sophos Home, they will, I believe it's 5 different licenses that you can actually manage. You can manage your machine, maybe the kids' machines, maybe a parent, grandma. You can manage all of their machines from there, and that's something that we give away free. A lot of our competitors will charge for that, but our goal is, 1, we want people to know who Sophos is, and 2, we want to protect the internet.
When you
Yes.
say machine, that's strictly PC or
Sophos Home is just going to be a Mac or PC. Yep. You guys probably don't care too much about nakedsecurity.sophos.com, just basically a blog that we have that just talks about security items. If you run an Android, do a search on Google Play for Sophos, and there's a free AV client on there. I strongly recommend running that. Most of what we see, I won't say that the iPhone is way better from a security perspective, but by the inherent nature of how Apple kind of locks it down and restricts access, it's a lot cleaner. Most of it does come in on the Android side. So I recommend going out and running Sophos on your Android device. Just do a search for Sophos. And if anyone is pretty tech savvy, we also have a free firewall that you can run at home, and you can do some web filtering for the kids and make sure that you lock some of that down. Also secure yourself from a vulnerability perspective. So I feel like I'm getting the hook. So yes.
I got hacked on my Twitter account last year, and
But that was
it locked me out
fun.
of my Twitter account, and so then we couldn't get back in. Well, it didn't do anything for a few months, and then put some good stuff on my Twitter account, which was on my website. But they got off real fast, and then I really got, couldn't get an answer from Twitter. Finally, I had to say I've been hacked because they just kept saying, "This is your password, change your password, change your password." And finally, I said I've been hacked, and someone has my name and their email, their password. So we finally got it fixed after a few months. Would that help that, or I've never been hacked by anything?
So there's so many different ways that someone can get your password. It's hard to know. Again, they could have something running on your machine where when you type it in, they're skimming that off, basically a keyboard logger. It could be a dictionary attack where they were just hitting your account. Do you have a lot of enemies? You look like you might have a lot of enemies.
I didn't change my password. I did them for a long time. But tried to get it in 3 times. I think it's a realtor now, it's different. And so they tried to get it in 3 times. Facebook shuts them down.
Yep.
They say, did you do this? No. Well, they said, did you do this? But I couldn't get it. They were already locked. Whoever had already locked me online.
It's hard to know how they got it. It could have, but it potentially, if they just hit it with a dictionary attack, they don't have to be on your machine at all.
And would this,
That's more the complex password.
would the Sophos help that or no?
It just depends on how they got it. So use strong passwords for one. I'll give Facebook props. They're really good from a security perspective. Like I said, the 2-factor auth that they have, they look to see, is this a normal pattern from you to log in from this location, and send you an email to let you know if someone's trying to get in.
They were really good, but Twitter was terrible. So
Yeah. Just use stronger passwords on that. And back to the password agent. So I use a utility called Password Agent to store everything all within there, because it's to the point to where it's so hard to keep up with everything. You keep everything as one. They get one password and they've got everything. It has a password generator within it. You can click generate a password. Granted, it's going to be a miserable password to put in, but you can just go and pull that up and then get into that. So there's a lot of that exist, but mine's called Password Agent that I have.
Is it true about the Macs being better? Because I've had a Mac since I was probably graduated high school, and I've never encountered anything on my actual laptop or my desktop on a Mac.
They have been a little bit better.
Okay, so, I see that you don't have my, and I don't want to start a big controversy, but I personally, I don't even, I love Macs, so I've used them, and I've never had a security issue, not ever.
The market share of Macs is minuscule compared to Windows machines, and it comes down to the corporate world. So if you're a hacker and you're writing something, you're going after the Windows machines.
Just because there's more out there, right?
Absolutely.
So if they would put more, it's just not.
I want to say they have
they would make more money putting more effort into the people
Yes.
having more of those.
Yeah.
So it's not
So
that they're better, they just don't.
They do change the way that you have access into the hardware level, so it's a lockdown in a little bit different way. So it is maybe a little bit better, but I think a lot of it, I want to say it was like 5% of market share is Macs. The guys, I've worked with a bunch of guys who try to run Macs on our corporate world, and it's a pain in the ass for them. It's more work than it's worth, and I always give them a hard time that it's just a toy.
Yeah, I know. I hear it all the time. I bought my son one of those, and within a month we had to buy like all kinds of virus stuff, and it would shut down. And
Yeah, they are a little bit better. But we have virus software for the Macs as well, and we have seen a little bit of a ramp up on the Mac OS side.
okay, so I can use that.
Yep.
This company for that too.
Yep, for sure. Okay. Any other questions? All right. I hope that was relevant, and I didn't bore you with too much technical stuff or scare you.